I always come back to this saying of you are where you're supposed to be.
Mhm.
I went through so much stuff, like I said, over the last 3 years that finally broke me down. And I was lying in a hospital, about to go into emergency surgery to have my gallbladder removed. And 3 weeks earlier, I had buried my 7 day old daughter who had died in my arms on Father's Day. And that was just like the tip of, I shouldn't say the tip of the iceberg, that was the iceberg, but there was so much other stuff that happened. And I
Wow,
was like,
yeah.
I just started to laugh, and I was like, okay, I see you, life. You're just gonna keep layering it on and giving it to me until I just release,
Mhm.
and that was such a huge, profound moment for me. So now when things happen like this, whatever it is, I'm just like, it's all good, man. Could be
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah, I think when you're faced with things like that, like, yeah, it could be worse, and like sometimes we fret over the smallest things, and it's like, yeah, but really, is it that big of a deal, Um, but like my story's similar. I think the question was like, what, like, coming into who I am, and when I had that realization of just being real and who I am and being authentic in my music, and um, five
Yeah.
years ago, I hit this wall of and this mountain of hopelessness where there's a lot of things in my past that I didn't deal with, and a lot of things that I just kind of buried in the subconscious of
Mm,
my mind, and it just all caught up to me one day, and life seemed, on the outside to be going very well, as it does, but on the inside there were of a lot of things that I haven't dealt with, that I didn't deal with, and I hit this mountain of hopelessness, man, and it just knocked me to my knees, and everything that I was burying in this closet just kind of all came out, and I was left to clean this mess. But anyway, I spent months of just spiraling in this depression, to the point of I got to a point where um I wanted to take my own life. And I remember at that point, nothing was helping me. I tried every single thing, and I was on a trail that's close to my house, by a lake, and it was me and my dog, and we're walking. And granted, I grew up in the church, and you know, my dad was a pastor slash bass player, a rock and roll guy. Um, and I walked away from all of that for the longest time because my notion from being jaded and kind of hurt by the church was like, if these people are anything or any reflection of God, I don't want anything to do with that God.
mhm.
And anyway, I long story short, I found faith and hope, as I cried out on that trail. Um, and that changed the trajectory of my life because I was at the end of my life and wanting to just end it all, and found complete hope in life, and had life breathed back into me during that moment. And I think that was the thing that opened my eyes to compassion and humanity, and
Yeah.
things that people go through, and being real with myself, and with others within my song, and within the music that I write. So I just, from that point, 5 years ago, I started approaching my creativity in that way, to where I'm not trying to, you know chase anything or impress anyone, or chase likes or follows or whatever. I'm like, I just have a story to tell, and
Yeah.
I'm going to handle it with the utmost excellence to glorify, you know, my God, and to help people, and to, give and have compassion, and love toward people, and just send these songs that are real, and they're real life stories about what I've gone through, and give them to whoever needs them. And they always seem to find the people, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be for everybody and everyone's not for me, but I always find that these songs, they find their way to the hearts of the people that needed to hear them, you know. And it's cool to always hear those stories. And again, it's just me being who I am within a song and within in the story, you know.
It's such an important message. I mean, like we work with so many artists. We've got a artist development agency. We every week go live on YouTube with
Yeah,
AMAs, and we encourage people to ask questions. And you know, when you're creating art for yourself and you're in that moment of just pure creation, you know, in the flow zone, etc., what happens is that you create this authentic stuff that finds an audience, right? Like you
yeah,
don't have to go out there and start to like peddle it on everyone. I mean, you want to market and do all these things, but
sure,
like naturally people will find you because the music will resonate with them.
yeah.
Um, so Joe James, Americana soul blues musician, Austin, Texas. We are actually recording this time. um, I really appreciate all the intro. I want to talk about real music, real people. That line, which technically we already talked about, but we will redo. Let me ask
Sure,
you something more like philosophical. I believe in God, but for me, God is just the word I use to talk about the universe, about that la vie,
sure,
right? The vibration of frequency that holds all of this crazy cosmic reality together. I haven't really dealt with the church a lot. I've grown up, I've studied different religions, I've traveled around the world and whatnot. From your perspective, why do people have such a hard time, oftentimes, and no knock on religion or whatever,
hmm
separating the two? Like, why do people need religion to get to God as opposed to just have the relationship with God? Yeah, personally, I feel like because of that, whatever it is,
sure.
we get into this crazy thing where people believe so ardently in their beliefs as the one truth, as opposed to the fact that literally all of us are saying, yes, God, but it has to be versus like this religion and this way and that way, as opposed to, aren't we all just seeking the same thing?
Sure. I mean, um, I can only speak to myself or for myself on you know this topic, but yeah, I think for me, I am a Christian, but I don't succumb to any type of religion. I think more for me, it's a relationship that I found with uh, the creator of the universe, you know, and like for me, it's I've seen in my own life um, how humbling myself and submitting all of these cares and these worries to a greater power has completely transformed my life, you know.
Mm,
And I can only speak to it from that angle, you know, is that I've watched God completely change and save my life. You know, I was at a point of wanting to end it, and I cried out, and I was met with this warmth and this hope that I haven't had in years, you know.
mm,
But I think a lot of times, unfortunately, that what I've seen is, you know, with a lot of organizations and religions or whatever, you have an aspect of control, and I think that's what ends up happening is you have humanity wanting or people more so wanting to control God, you know, and you just can't. And I love there's a quote that John Lennon says, and he says, "I love humanity, but it's people that I just can't stand," you know.
yeah.
And like a lot of times, what ends up happening, and you see it in many different avenues, and unfortunately, in the church, which I think the church should be the place where we are a salt and we are a light and we're a life to humanity and people around us, you know. But a lot of times that, you know, the church ends up finding themselves in a little bubble and kind of pushing everybody away, you know. Um, but you know, that to say, I've seen in my 5 years of coming back, I've seen the good and the bad in those
Hmm.
areas, you know. And I've seen there's a passage that talks about how the wheat grow up with the tares, and it's talking about how and it's Jesus speaking to farmers, but he's using this analogy in this parable of like wheat grows up, but also weeds grow up with the wheat. So what ends up happening is you see them grow up together and you try to distinguish, and they're hard to see who is what until a point of humility comes that what wheat ends up doing is it ends up withering down and kind of like bows down in a sense of like humility and humbleness, but the terrors and the weeds, they stand up straight with this
Yeah.
pride and arrogance, and you see it within the church realm, you see it in everywhere. But I think I think the thing I'd encourage people to do is have that sense of exploration, to explore things and to also, especially if, I know Christianity has been a thing to where, you know, people look at it from a viewpoint of a lot of these are these legalistic, hateful people at its core. But I would encourage people to explore God, to explore Jesus, to explore all of these things, for themselves, as opposed to trying to conform to whatever organizations, is telling you to conform to theirs. But again, that's just my
Yeah.
perspective and what I've found. And I found a lot of good in it, and I found some bad in it too,
Mhm.
within the relationship in the community that I've found within Christianity. I've found some great people who care about people, who love people, and try to reflect the heart of God towards people. And I've also found some really, terrible folks within it
Yeah.
as well, I think goes with everything.
You said something earlier with, the trail, and you were on the trail and you just had that moment and you finally just let go of everything and you just
Mhm.
kind of called out. I had that moment a few times too, where I just
Yeah.
finally hit a place where I didn't know how to proceed from there. And so
Yeah.
I just asked. And personally, I believe that to know God is to know thyself. And I think that God is in me in the sense that if we can go inward and breathe, calm
Mhm.
ourselves, and truly focus, we have the best ability to connect with the universe, to connect with everything. Um, and I think in that moment when you and I are giving up, or not
Yeah.
giving up, but letting life like break us down to the point where we said, okay, I get it. I need
Yeah. I,
help,
I
or
think it's
show me.
a surrender more than
Yeah,
like just like I'm letting it go.
100%. And that moment for both of us was so life altering and important. And so that I use the analogy of stop thinking outward.
Hmm.
Like, as a coach, I say, get out of your head and get into your heart. Stop
Hmm.
thinking cerebrally. Stop looking outward and upward for answers, because they are inward. And once you go inward and you find that thing, let's say art, and you feel it and you connect with it, and that's your truth, then you can go back into your mind and then project that outwards or communicate it, because you've truly felt it and you truly know it and understand it a bit more now.
Yeah.
Um, this all leads back perfectly to real music for real people. Clearly,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
keeping it real.
And in music, man, like they say it's the universal language. It's there's in the frequency is music is the most healing thing, man. Like yeah, I've experienced moments where you get people from all walks of life, all different, denominations or religions or political parties or whatever, and you put them in a room with their favorite artist that spoke to them, and you leave all of that at the door,
Yep.
and you just sit and you enjoy music together as one community in that time, and in those songs and those stories and the sounds, they just speak to you and they move you in that moment. And I think it's so important, and that's why uh I love the art of music, and I love the healing power of music and what it does to people, and it allows them to let go of whatever, you know, thing that they're bringing into that room and they just leave it and they enjoy themselves with a person standing next to them that maybe has a different, uh, you know, uh, political party that they disagree with or whatever, but they'll stand there in that moment and have an amazing, beautiful, healing time with each other because of music. And I
Yeah.
think music is such an important thing, man. It's like it is for me, I've watched it do so many it's of course had its ups and downs, but it's just been one of those things, man, that I've watched it for myself and for others just bring people together, which is what we need more these days, you know?
100%. I mean, that you're doing such a good job of just naturally setting things up. And I think for me, this is the flow. This is like tapping into that universal energy, the God energy, whatever it is, when things just organically happen. And
Mm,
sometimes they don't. And if you do get a block, my opinion is to just continue flowing. I
yeah,
spoke with an artist named Freedom Heart Song, and I asked him about writer's block. And he said, I don't get it. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, if I get a block, I just immediately pivot. And what ends up happening is that I'll unblock. And he was talking about songwriting. And he said, I'll go out and garden, and then I'll just garden for a few hours. And all of a sudden, while I'm gardening in that flow, then I'll have the idea of the
yeah,
song and how to finish the song. And it's so important to just continuously surrender to that, to use our words. Veritas and Vox Populi. Those were the values that you highlighted. Veritas meaning truth, transparency, integrity.
mm,
Vox
mm,
Populi, the voice of the people, encouragement, accessibility. This is literally the conversation so far, and I want to
wow,
tie it into your music, into your performance. Um, Lyrics of resilience, redemption, identity, hope, and this is
wow,
all stuff that's going to be on your upcoming album out
yeah,
in September, I believe.
yep,
So
September 18th, yeah,
the truth, the veritas is there, bro. You're embodying this. Tell me a bit
yeah,
more about why, it that resonated with you, other than the obvious.
yeah, because I mean, it's so important, man, just I mean, to speak, like we were just talking about, to speak your truth and your story, because your story, you don't realize how much it can impact others, you know? And I think a lot of
Mhm.
times we harbor things within ourselves and we don't say those quiet things out loud, you know? And for me, I've seen the value in speaking those quiet, dark troubles, um, victories, whatever, like to say them aloud. And I just so happen to say them within a song, you know?
Mhm.
Um, but it's so important to speak that truth and to say those quiet things out loud because people need to hear them. And it also frees you from the chains, you know, of keeping it all in, you know, is to say it um, really frees you and it also impacts and helps and gives others hope as well, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that ties in nicely to that concept of surrendering.
Mm,
You're surrendering to your own song. You're allowing the
yeah,
song to give you a platform to share the good, bad, and ugly of Joe
yeah.
James outwards. Do you find that your music and your songwriting is your own, like, is its own form of therapy for you?
Oh, 100%, man. It is therapy for me. I find when I put pen to paper or when I'm bringing it to the producer or other my co-songwriters, like it's therapeutic because I'm talking about it. I'm talking about, hey, this is what I went through, or this is what I'm going through right now, or this is what I'm excited about. Um, it's a therapy session in and of itself, and then you get to listen back, and you also get to reflect back on like you know, how far you've come because you look at the songs at as these little snippets of your life and what you've gone through. And you're like,
Yeah.
I remember that moment, you know, and I think there's a such a strength in remembering. There's a band called the Wood Brothers, and they had this lyric in a song that said, "Remember to remember." And so I always try to do try to do that. It's remember to remember, remember what I've gone through and how I've overcome it. And songs are that for me, man. Like they, you know, they're therapeutic and they also help me to remember what I've gone through and what I've overcome essentially.
That's amazing. I had a thought earlier that I wanted to bring back. So, similar to the idea or the phrase "punk's not dead," I'm a big believer that discourse is not dead, and we need discourse more than ever now. Um, we need to renormalize discourse because there's more in this world that we have in common than we don't, right? And we've somehow
Mm,
been pushed into this place in society where it's about your opinions, it's about what side you're on, it's about your ideas or that one take that you said as opposed to your character. Like who is Joe James? And sure he might vote differently than me or think differently than me, but like can I have a beer with him? Is he a good dude? Does he
yeah,
show up?
man.
And so this conversation that we're having is exactly what society needs to be doing en masse to reconnect, to get rid of top down control, to get more of the, by the people, for the people community. It sounds
Mm.
like that's also how you are, and you embody that in your live show.
Yeah, man. Well, I just love people, man. And that's the thing is I have compassion for people and you know, there's a passage that says faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love, and to
Oh,
have
yeah.
that type of love too for people and to understand, too that like uh everyone's going through something. And I think a lot of times we think we're the main character of everybody's story and the whole world's story, and it's to have that togetherness and and knowing that everybody's going through something. And so to
Yeah.
have that and there is, you know, uh an entity that is trying to divide, because once you divide everybody and everyone picks a sides and we're all at war with each other, and but when we all come together and we understand and we try to empathize and have compassion towards each other, then you see something great and you see the start to happen and you see the power in that type of thing is is uniting and being together and having compassion and love towards each other even if you don't agree. Again, I don't have to agree or affirm people or whatever. I will sit down with people and I will talk with people and I'll go have lunch and dinner with them and be friends with them. And I have a lot of friends that we don't see eye to eye on a lot of things, but we still go out for coffee and laugh and have a good
Absolutely.
time. And the fact that we can't do that in this world is such a tragedy. No matter what side you're on, the fact that I can't sit down with somebody just because they disagree with me on, my beliefs or my political views or whatever or my even my music taste, whatever the case may be, is like it's such a tragedy that we can't do that.
Yeah.
And the fact that I have people in my life that again we don't disagree with each other or we don't agree with each other on some things, but we can still sit down and have coffee and laugh and talk about life and each other's families and is so beautiful, man. And that's what
Yeah.
the world needs these days. Anyone else who is not doing that needs I'd encourage them to get on board because you'd be a lot less bitter, if you
Yeah.
did.
I I learned this from someone else in North Vancouver, and I've been using it every once in a while on these chats. But I was taught late in life never to have opinions or anything similar to opinions. Simply have a position, because if you
Mm,
change the mindset to saying I have a position on whatever movement, whatever politic,
sure.
then you leave yourself open for that position to shift. Because I might say, you know what, I have nothing to do with church and screw religion. That might be my position on it. But then I sit down with you, Joe, for 30 minutes and you bring up all these facts. And I'm like, man, Joe's such a rad dude. And like, you know what? I was picking up some of that stuff that he was putting down. And just like that, boop, my position shifted on that topic. Right. So stay open, stay
Yeah,
amenable to
and
like,
yeah, have an understanding for I mean for people like sit again, everyone comes from so many different walks of life, It's like I love to hear the different positions. I love to hear those, and I'm always open to hear them. Like, why wouldn't I be? And I'm
yeah,
always open to sit down and talk about them. I've done it multiple times with friends of mine here in Austin, that we love each other, and we play music with each other, and again, we have different positions on topics, on certain topics, but we could sit down and we could talk, and that's the beautiful thing, man. That's the
Yeah.
way it should be. That's the way I wish it was with a lot of, folks.
I mean, our differences are what make this whole thing so special, right? If everyone was the same, this thing would get kind of boring after a while.
We'd all be
And
robots, right?
yeah, and if you can't like if I can't sit down and talk with you and hear opposing views without being triggered or whatever, that says more about me than it does about you, and I'm in control of that. I need to work on
Yeah.
that shit.
Well,
Let me sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
no, no, yeah. I would love to bring up this because this is such a an eye opener, and it was an eye opener for me too. And we talk about like religion, and we see a lot of people who, you know, um, have their opinions, and they're very strong, and and they kind of push that on others, and whatever, and they don't want to listen to anyone else. Uh, I always think back, and there's a book called Matthew in the Bible, and you see Jesus sit down with all of these people that the religious folks really despised, and had a very grand opinion on these specific individuals. But Jesus would sit down and have dinner with them, and he'd talk with them, and they would come and they'd say, why are you even eating with these people? And he would say, because like you don't need me. Like they want to be around me, and I want to be around them, and I want to help them, and I want to be here for them, but you guys think you're better. So, and that's and that is the person that a lot of these religions base their whole entire religion on, is this guy. But I guess they miss that part of it, and
Mhm.
that part that he always had, over and over, had compassion for people, always over and over had love for people. I think the people he kind of despised the most were the religious people, you know, and they were the ones that essentially killed him, So it's and so like I always tell people, think about that. Like that's that people can claim to worship somebody um, all they want, but if their actions don't reflect that person's example, then they're really not worshiping that person. They're worshiping something else, you
Yeah.
know.
For me, I love that sentiment. It's taking me back to something I wanted to ask you, kind of
Mhm.
selfishly. For me, with all the stuff that happened in my life recently,
Yeah,
like the surrender, everything, it made me realize that I need to love myself above everything else first and foremost in order to to be a healed, kind, good person and be able to show up for everyone else. And for me, in the loving of myself is where I learned to love God or the universe, which for me was and is one and the same. But that was only possible with that moment, like on the trail that you were on, where there was almost like the death of the ego, right? Not the
sure.
death
Yeah.
of the self, right? So there's a big difference between I and me, I believe. And I felt like I finally understood who I was, and it wasn't
Mhm.
about me anymore, but I knew that I needed to get I right in order to help the we.
Sure.
What do you
Uh,
think?
yeah. So, I mean, for me, it was again, I believe the death to ego, but I've seen that I was in desperate need of someone to save me. And I've tried to save myself multiple times, and I just found myself in addictions and all of these things, and just to the point I wanted to end it all, And so for me, again, I believe that we're all created in the image of God. So when you talk about, yourself, you are an image bearer of this grand creator, this higher power, if you will. And so, like, I, when I came to that point, I recognized who I was a reflection of and an image of, and submitted myself to that thing which essentially, you know, um, allowed me to be transformed into the best of myself, you know. And so that's how my story came to be, and my position on it would be that, you know, is that I believe that we are all created in the image of, and once we have that realization, and it's a beautiful realization, if you say, man, I was formed and created in my mother's womb as an image of this grand, being that surpasses all time, and what, like, I'm made in that image, that's pretty
Yeah.
awesome, you know? And so that's kind of when I died to myself and my ego, I submitted and surrendered to that,
Yeah.
essentially, you know?
I mean, you said such a cool point there. And for anyone listening or watching, like, I'm not a religious person. I can't speak for Joe, but the whole point of this is not a sermon or to be preachy. It's
Right,
to
yeah.
discuss and hear different positions and try to learn something about yourself and fellow human being across from you. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. And if you're feeling upset or triggered about something, then you need to start to ask yourself why, because that lies within you, not within someone else. Um,
It's good.
Everything and Nothing is the album, and it's
Mhm.
so funny that we're gonna wrap up talking about your
Yeah.
music, and, like, that is the name because, you said something cool there, right? That this I've become a much more positive person in the sense that I see all things negative
Mm,
as unrealized good. When my daughter died, there was nothing good about it. However, now, a year and a half later, my partner and I are going to be welcoming another baby girl, right? So my life wouldn't have led me to having this child
mm.
if that one wasn't taken. And that doesn't, change how hard that was, but you can
Right.
find the good in things. And what you said right there about like the miracle of life, just the fact that you somehow were born and are alive is like for me the thing now, right? It's like
It's
what
it's a
greater gift?
miracle. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is really a miracle, man, that, like, if you think about this, the science behind all of that, like the fact that you're here, the fact that I'm here, like, what a miracle, what a blessing. I mean, we should be great stewards with this life that we have and that we're given, and
Yeah.
don't and not take it for granted and have amazing conversations like this, you know. Um, yeah, I just love it, man. I love this, that we can, coming from two different places, that you and I, Christopher, can, like, sit down. This is how it should be, you know?
Yeah. 100%. And
Yeah.
and I can see that in you, and I can imagine that you're superimposing that same vibe, that same feeling onto the audiences when you perform. But why don't we wrap up with
Yeah.
Everything and Nothing?
Yeah, because I
It's
think we're at like 33 minutes now. Huh?
That's okay. That's okay, man.
Yeah.
Like, I am where I'm supposed to be, right, brother?
Heck yeah. That's right. Yeah.
But like, how funny is it that we have this deep, meaningful conversation, and it's like, everything is everything and nothing. So talk to
Yeah.
me about like the album title and really just what that means to you.
Sure. 'Cause I believe so. The song "Everything and Nothing" is the title track, and I wrote it with a friend of mine named Amy Hooper. And my wife and I, we walked through infertility for, man, like, for years, and we were just always met. We got this desire placed on our hearts to be parents, and I believe that desire came from God. And so we had this desire, and then, a year goes by, 2 years go by, month after month after month, surgery, and I'm just like, wow, what a sick joke you would play on me to put this desire on our hearts, and
Yeah.
not give it to us. Like, that's what a terrible thing to do. Um, but I still kept my faith and my hope, and um, anyway, the song came from that specifically. And my friend Amy is friends with my wife, and Amy is a fantastic songwriter. And so we got together, and she had coffee with my wife Chelsea, and she's like, "Why don't we write a song about what you guys are going through, but write it from the perspective of your wife?" And so I was like, "Cool, yeah." And so we came up with um, this concept of, like, this paradox of hope and pain can coexist in the same space.
Yep.
And a lot of times we either want the hope and the happiness and being blessed and having a good time to just be the thing, and then pain and suffering and not having and all of these things are completely separated, and like they can't coexist in the same space, which is I don't think is reality. I think most of the time they are coexisting in the same space. And to
Definitely.
get comfortable with, hope and pain can be, in that same space. So we came up with the idea of like everything. I had the title Everything and Nothing like sitting in my mind for a long time, and I was like, let's just put it, that'll be the title. Like we're holding everything and nothing. And again, pain is something, but we just associated the numbness and whatever with the word nothing. But yeah, it's just about the paradox of hope and pain coexisting together.
I love that. It's funny because it's the wheat and the weeds that you referenced earlier, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
that was one of the things that helped me over the last few years and has transformed my life was this idea of oneness. Like I was so fixated on right and wrong, and that's not fair. And eventually through coaching, this idea of oneness was put into my world, and
Mm,
that's when I started to really see that you definitely can't have one without the other. You can't have light without dark, et cetera, et cetera. Doesn't mean you have to focus on the dark. You can focus on the
right.
light, be aware of the dark, respect the dark, know the dark, but focus on the light. Um, and in doing so, it allowed me to really just start to see things the way I wanted to see them, meaning
Mm,
I don't think dark's bad anymore. I think it's everything and nothing. And you know what I did? I said, well, you only really get light from dark. You only, become a diamond if you apply extreme pressure and difficulty to it. So why don't we just maybe reframe or rephrase, sorry, negative to positive?
mm.
And one could argue that positive is also negative, right? Because if everything is too good all the time, then you get soft and apathetic and you don't grow as much. So maybe the paradox is that bad is good and good is bad.
Yeah, and I think the thing for me too, what always has helped me is learning to find rest in the valleys, because a lot of times we um we celebrate the mountaintops so much
Mm,
that we just want to stay there. And the fact of the matter is that we spend like 90% of our lives in the valleys, so learn to rest there. Learn to know like they coexist in the same place. You could be hopeful there. You can be happy there. You can, and I think that's the thing with and kind of with the whole album is you hear a lot of songs that kind of talk about that topic. It's just like even songs like Sweet Something that like that I have on there. It's like a cool, fun song. Like, but in the middle of that song, writing that song, like I was in a weird season, of my life trying to figure some things out, and it wasn't bad, but it wasn't good either. But I was
yeah.
able to tap into finding, you know, uh, inspiration to write a really cool summer love song. So they all coexist in the same space.
Hell
Um,
yeah. Joe James, this has been a very, very valuable value session, and I really appreciate your candor. I mean, like Veritas, your transparency, and all the stuff that you've talked about is just so rad. Why don't you wrap us up, man? Send us home.
Dude, yeah, thank you, Christopher. I appreciate, you having me on and us having this conversation. And uh I was not expecting this conversation. I was just expecting kind of another interview, asking about yeah, you know how the interviews go. Like they
I
ask
do.
about like how do you write songs, and how long have you been playing? So I love like these, no diss on those people, but like I love really deep and meaningful conversations like this. So thank you. Um, but yeah, again, my name is Joe James. I'm from Austin, Texas, and I'm releasing an album September 18th called Everything and Nothing, and it's just music that comes from a real, raw, authentic place. And if you dig that type of music and you like nostalgic music that reminds you of 70s, 80s retro type stuff, like this might just be for you. Um, but yeah, thank you again, Christopher. I truly admired this conversation, man. It was awesome.